Welcome into Season 4 of the Wrestling with Legends podcast. I am your host, Vince McKee. And yes, it is the season premiere right here, Season 4 of the show. Hard to believe we've been doing this since the early days of the pandemic back in 2020. Started doing it in the spring that year, and it has definitely become our yearly tradition here at Key Island Sports. Once high school football and basketball is done for the year, we always have a little bit of time left over, and, we've heard from the fans how much you love hearing from these legends of the WWE. We certainly have one today. Steve Lombardi wrestled for many, many years with the company as clearly the Brooklyn Brawler, his most famous gimmick, along with Kim Chi, Doink the Clown, Abe Knuckleball Schwartz, the Black Knight, and several others. We're very excited to have Mr. Lombardi on the show today. Without any further ado, let's get him to the phone and get this episode rolling. And again, welcome back as Season 4 begins. All right, fans, welcome in now again our guest today. It is Steve Lombardi. As we said there in the opening, you guys knew him very well as the Brooklyn Brawler, along with several other gimmicks we'll get to here shortly. Welcome into the show, and thank you for joining us today, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Just kind of wanted to start off very early into your career with the then WWF. You had worked with several talents, helping to put them over and establish their names on WWF television. Who were some of the men you enjoyed working with the most in the very beginning, and who were some of the names that were a bit more challenging?
Okay, the number one name is Rock. I had his first match, his first appearance ever in front of an audience. And if you watch Young Rock, you'll see that season 2, episode 8, you can actually see it on Young Rock. Mm-hmm. There's an actor playing me. There's an actor playing him, because I was 37 when I had the match. He's never been in front of the audience. The audience booed him right out of the building. Because they didn't know him as The Rock.
Can you sense? Yeah, definitely. I mean, can you sense that he, even though with the crowd reaction of what it was, given his family history?
Yeah. Well, if you watch the episode, mm-hmm. It's very realistic. Get out of here. Go back to Florida. We don't know who you are. Who the hell are you? What are you doing in the ring? Because he was not known yet. He only had $7 in the bank when I wrestled him. I know since he's 8 years old. I also had his dad's first match in WWF. I also had Ricky Steamboat's first match in WWF. I also had Mark Henry's first match in WWF. I also had Bret Hart's first match in WWF. I also had Owen Hart's first match in WWF. I mean, I could go on and on and on. They always used me to introduce the people to, see how good they are, and Rock hit a home run the first match. He hit every move, every high spot. He did everything. He got a contract in 2 days. Of course, what happened? Did you watch the episode?
Oh yes, sir. We watched it every week religiously.
I mean, did you see my episode?
Yes, sir. We watch it every week religiously. It's definitely a staple of our house. Okay. We enjoy it.
When I had his match, remember when I had him in a reverse chin lock and his hand was down on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
And he whispered to me, "What should we do next?" And I said to him, "Just shut up and see if they give a shit about you."
Yeah.
And then he started raising his hand slow, and the people were coming up with him. You know what I mean? They believed in everything he did. When he was selling, I was beating the shit out of him. And then when his hand went up, the whole backstage freaked out because it was his first time ever in front of an audience, and we convinced the people that he knew what he was doing.
You mentioned a couple names there as well. Two of our favorites, certainly. You mentioned Ricky Steamboat and also Bret Hart.
Ricky Steamboat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start with Ricky Steamboat.
Sure.
Ricky Steamboat was a big star in Charlotte, and his first match was in WWF was in Poughkeepsie, New York. I was just starting in the business, so they would just squash me, beating the shit out of me. So all of a sudden, my name was on the list against Ricky Steamboat in his very first debut match in WWF. So I went up to him. I said, "Mr. Steamboat, I'm Steve Lombardi, I'm wrestling you tonight for the first time in WWF. He says, I just want to tell you one thing. I don't beat dish rags. So he took me in the ring, and he treated me like I was a top guy, where he would sell for me the same way he would with anybody else. And all the boys freaked out. I remember walking back and Tito Santana going, how did that feel? How did it feel? The guy actually gave me offense and sold for me. And ever since he did that, all the other talents started doing the same thing. So Ricky Steamboat actually started my competitive career.
That's excellent.
Bret Hart.
Mm-hmm.
Bret Hart came in with a backwards baseball cap. He always dressed like very casual. But he was from Stu's Dungeon, which everybody from Calgary was very polished. So Bret Hart was like technically sound, but the problem was Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, all these other guys were a lot bigger than him. Well, not Randy Savage, but Hulk Hogan, and Vince was looking more at the big guys,
Mm-hmm.
So Bret worked his way up, being the technical wrestler that everyone wanted to wrestle. And there's a lot of stories with Bret, like the Montreal Screwjob and all that stuff.
You were
You've heard about that?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's much later on. But
here's a good story for you.
Sure.
Bret Hart. We were in a battle royal in Madison Square Garden, and Ken Shamrock. Remember Ken?
Certainly.
He was supposed to win, but he hurt his sternum, which is a bone in the center of your chest.
Mm-hmm.
He hurt it in the match earlier. So everybody went into Vince's room and said, Vince, Shamrock cannot go over. He can't even wrestle. He's hurt. Vince put his glasses down to the tip of his nose. He looked up. He said, put over the Brooklyn Brawler. He goes, he's local. And then he did not remember that he announced the winner of the Battle Royal will wrestle the world champion in the next Garden show.
Yeah.
So at that time, the world champion was Bret. Now, Bret, then the Montreal Screwjob came before the next Garden show. So Bret and Shawn had a falling out because Shawn said, in Bret's words, said, what I'm doing for you, I would do for no one else in my hometown. And then Bret, I quoted Shawn said, that's a lot more than I would ever do for you. So Bret went into Vince and said, I'm not putting Shawn over. And they had a big argument. He says, I'll tell you what, I will do a job and lose to the Brooklyn Brawler. Actually, I don't know if that was a brawler yet, Steve Lombardi. And he says, before I do it for Shawn. If you ask Bret the same question, he'll tell you the same answer. So I wound up wrestling Shawn Michaels in Madison Square Garden. Now, Shawn was not the same Shawn yesterday as he is today. Today he's very religious. He's very tight. Then he was a rebel. Him and Marty were like, practical jokers, like the chief used to say. Chief says Strongbow. The inmates run the asylum.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was privately owned. Vince owned the company himself. Then when it went, and then we were sitting in a bar. It was me, Arnold Skoll, and Shawn Michaels comes walking in. Arnold Skoll goes, "Hey, Shawn, you're wrestling in the Garden next month or week or whatever it was." He goes, "The guy's sitting right next to me, the Brooklyn Brawler." Now I said to myself, he's gonna go crazy. He's gonna be pissed off. Instead, he did the complete opposite. He got excited about the match. He said, "Oh man, could you do this? Can you super kick? Can you leapfrog? Can you do it?" He started going crazy. I said, "Yeah, I'll do anything you want. I'll do anything you want." So I got to wrestle Shawn Michaels in Madison Square Garden, the first day of the origination of DX. So China and Hunter were on the apron. He gave me the match of a lifetime. And Hunter, I popped him off the apron. China, back then you could hit a girl, But it was 23,000 people. I mean, my goal was to wrestle at Madison Square Garden one time my whole life. I wrestled there 52 times in 32 years. So my dream came through 52 times.
Well, that's incredible. That night of the Montreal Screwjob, how do you think that was handled? I mean, who do you think was right and who do you think was wrong, or is there no right or wrong in that kind of situation?
You think you're asking me if Vince should have canceled the show or just kept going?
The Montreal Screwjob. Do you feel that Brett was right not to want to job out to Shawn Michaels, or do you feel that Vince was?
Well, he took it as disrespect. In other words, you know what? I'm doing this interview for you, and you telling me right now I would never do one for you. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
That's the way it is. He got insulted. He was insulted. And I don't blame him.
Yep. The other thing, too, I wanted to circle back a little bit is, in 1989, early 1989, you started a program with the Red Rooster, but you were managed by Bobby Heenan. And to me, and I'll be honest, at that time I was a little boy, but I definitely remember it crystal clear because it was really cool to see you get a bit of a push there. I'm just wondering, whose idea was that, and what was it like working with Bobby Heenan?
Bobby Heenan, to me, made my whole career. He came up to me and he says, now you know how to work, now we're going to teach you how to make money. So he told me to wear ripped-up clothes and get all scruffy looking, and then I'll never forget it. It was in Hershey, Pennsylvania. He said, come outside with me. He said, see that dirt right there? Roll around in the dirt. I said, Bobby, what are you, crazy? I'm going to roll around in dirt. He goes, I want you to be a scruffy, dirty street fighter. That's what he wanted. And then my career went to the moon after that. I mean, he was the greatest manager of that day.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agreed. I wanted to ask you this too, and to me this is probably a question I'm guessing no one's ever asked you, but I think it's pretty cool actually. You wrestled in the Sky Dome at WrestleMania 6 in what was seen as an opening match. A lot of people don't realize it until you go to a live show.
Who did I wrestle with? I don't remember.
Paul Roma, but.
Okay.
What was it like wrestling in the Sky Dome with that many people there and, 67,000 people in Toronto for WrestleMania 6? Everybody was there that night for Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, and we're going to get to that in a second, but do you remember your part of that night?
I remember. It's so hard to explain unless you feel it yourself. When you're in a small, intimate building like Poughkeepsie, New York, which is probably holds 500 people. I've wrestled in a Pontiac Silverdome in front of 93,000 people. You feel like it's easier and you're more in touch with the people when it's a smaller audience. The Pontiac Silverdome is huge.
Certainly.
And I believe that, and it feels like the people are so far away that they're not getting the same feeling that you're trying to portray as if it was a small audience.
Later on that night, it was Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6 defeating Hulk Hogan. Do you feel that was the right move for the company to make, to take the belt off of Hogan and put it on the Ultimate Warrior, or do you think that might have been a bit of a mistake?
No, I think it was a good move because Hogan did not even need the belt. Hogan could sell out without the belt. So what they did was they took Hogan's belt, put it on Warrior, and of course Hogan agreed to it. Now we had two guys. We got a guy who he looks great, his body looks great, but he doesn't have the charisma that Hogan had. Hogan had a special feeling, like he's a movie star, like a superstar. So the belt meant nothing to Hogan.
What was it like working with the Ultimate Warrior?
I worked with the Ultimate Warrior 47 consecutive days in a row.
Oh my gosh.
He was very, I don't mean day after day, I mean every time I went on the road.
Sure.
I went home 3 days, yeah. So anyway, he was very excited. He would run to the ring full speed. He'd get in the ring. He'd be winded already. And then, his thing was he would shake the ropes and you just pound on him, you pound on him, you pound on him, and then he keeps moving around, that pounding, and he unloads, and he throws you in for the clothesline, and then picks you up, drops you behind him. It was very like iffy that it was good enough to get as high of a status that he got. And there was one time, the story's out now because I said it before, but it was podcast and I told his wife. They came into me and they said, we're going to go up to Ultimate Warrior and we're going to tell him that you're going to win tonight. So I liked Jim. I didn't want him to go, fuck this shit, I can't stand it, I'm not going to. So what I did was, I went into his dressing room, which back then it was private. Private dressing room for Hogan, private dressing room for Warrior. It was like that. I went in there. I said, Jim, but it wasn't private for him yet. I said, Jim, they're going to test you tonight. They're going to tell you I'm going over. What you need to say is, anything you want, I'm here for business. He said, holy shit, I can't believe you told me this. I says, I told you it, but I shouldn't have told you it. But I like you, and I want you to make it. So then, the company was on the outs with him for years and years and years, and then they got back together as in a friendship, and they put him in the Hall of Fame. So then he did have a private dressing room. I walked into it. He started crying. He goes, I was just thinking about you. He goes, I can't believe you were the only one that did not knock me on the tape. Remember they made a DVD knocking him.
Self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, very good. And he says, you're the only one on the tape that talked good about me. You're the only one that said good words about me. He says, so be prepared to stand up at the Hall of Fame tonight, and I'm going to tell the story. I said, Jim, please don't tell the story, because I'm presently working for the company, and they're going to say we can't tell him anything because he goes back into. Did I do the right thing? I would do the same thing over again, but I think I did him a hell of a favor because back then it was like I'm not doing a job for him, I'm not losing to him, but it wasn't like that. He said exactly what I said, and then they started using him. And I think it's a hell of a story, but he did say stand up, and he said you can find the seat online if you want. He goes, is Stephen Buddy in the audience? Could you stand up? I stood up, and he said, Steve took a lot of my abuse over the years and always kept a great attitude. That's all he said.
Yeah, no, certainly so. And I thought that was pretty incredible. And I wanted to bring something up to you here because a big reason why, I've been trying to interview you here for a while, and I'm finally glad we were able to hook up and do this. Last year on the show, we had Barry Horowitz came on and did an interview with us. And then we also had Dusty Wolf came on and did an interview with us as well. And both those guys were very adamant, because you just got done talking about the Hall of Fame, so that's why I wanted to bring this up. Both those guys were very adamant that there should be an enhancement talent wing of the Hall of Fame. Definitely something that should be a tradition every year. And you could ask anybody, and that's usually the first three people everybody names is clearly the Brooklyn Brawler, Barry Horowitz, and Dusty Wolf. How would you feel about something like that?
I'd be all for it, but it's not my decision. And if that doesn't happen, believe me, I'm not going to lose any sleep. You know what I mean? Because like my best friend, Harvey Whippleman, downtown Bruno, he says, "Show me where the hole is. There isn't even a hole." we don't even have a hall. But the idea is people understood as I got older that losing was not because you're the shits. It's because I was paid to find the faults in the person and the strengths in the person. And I accentuated the strength of the person and hid the faults. Like when I went to the ring with Ricky Steamboat, I didn't do the same thing I did when I went to the ring with Mark Henry. You know what I mean? I used power match spots with him because it was a power match. And Ricky Steamboat could do anything. Double leapfrog.
Oh, sure.
Anything. But you had to adjust. It's like being a chameleon. You had to adjust to that person's strong points.
The interesting thing, too, and I have his name written down here to ask you a question about him, so I'm actually glad you brought it up, is Harvey Whippleman. Downtown Bruno, Harvey Whippleman, however he wanted to go by at that time, I had met you on the road a few times as a fan. I just happened to be in a hotel at the same time or a restaurant, and every time I met you, you were with Harvey, so I knew there was probably a bit of a friendship there. What kind of roles did you guys have?
We were best friends for like 25, 30 years. We traveled together.
Yeah. What kind of roles did you guys have backstage when if you were not on screen, you were kind of a backstage role? What were the types of things you guys would do?
Harvey or me?
Both of you.
Okay, Harvey he likes to be called a concierge because anything and everything that needed to get done or you needed right away, you go to Harvey. He had that gift of making it happen. Me, I had a fantastic rapport with all the wrestlers, so I was able to get the wrestler in the room to do what was needed to be done. So they put me in charge of they call it a pre-tape room, which you would call like a production room, where I did DVDs, international leads, the actual video, the destruction of Ultimate Warrior. I actually put that together. I actually sat in the chair and asked myself the question out loud, and then paused and then answered them. That's how I put myself in them.
Right.
So plus, when you're doing that, now you're okay. This is after Bobby Heenan and all that shit. So then you become like, not forgotten, but the Brooklyn Brawler, this and that. That's why they picked me to beat Triple H. That's why they picked me to beat certain people, because it's like the Rocky movie. Rocky was not supposed to beat Clubber Lang. You know what I mean? He's an underdog. If you put somebody on the same level, then it's too competitive. It's too having Sylvester Stallone go over makes it more exciting because it wasn't expected.
So
and there was a lot of moments in my life like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, your story is great, and I'll tell you why. Quite frankly, it's perseverance, hard work, dedication, and loyalty, and those are words that a lot of people do not live by these days, and they should. And that's something you did. I mean, a tremendous, no ego involved, and just worked your butt off. And again, I'll be honest, to me, that's definitely something that a lot of people could learn from, whether it's professional wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. It's not an easy life, but it is something you committed to yourself for a long time. So certainly, as a fan, that jumped off the screen for me. I had two questions left for you. One of them has to do with a guy that you had mentioned earlier with Owen Hart. Again, as a wrestling fan, this was something that was very difficult for me to, get through. It was his tragic passing. How hard was that for you guys to be able to, step back into reality there so quickly? And I mean, do you feel that, Vince McMahon did the right thing by having that show continue on that night, or should it have been called, or just how chaotic were things?
Everybody asks that question. It's done now. Vince did it. If Vince called the show off, they would have bitched about that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants what they don't have. I believe Owen would have wanted the show to go on. That's my personal belief, knowing Owen all so many years.
What
and
was
everybody
your...
thought it was part of the show.
Sure.
Everybody thought it was part of the show. You know, he fell 90 feet from the sky. My last words to him were, as he was walking up with the suit on, I said, "Where you going, Owen?" He goes, "I'm moonlighting." Those are my last words to Owen. But whatever decision was made, people always complain. They'll always complain. That's in life in general. Now, you follow me on Twitter, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you see how positive I stay with everything?
Constantly.
I practice my life that way. I practice my life that way. You should be grateful for everything you have, no matter what you have. And you know what I mean? And the success of being successful is doing the best with what you have, and that is the damn truth, and that's what I believe.
Absolutely. You're 100% right.
It's right for everything, and every job, and every person. You know, everybody thinks if you don't look like Hulk Hogan, you'll never make it. You'll never make it. I didn't look nothing like Hulk Hogan. I made it. You know, I did very, very, very well.
I think your story is an incredible one. I do. And like I said, we followed you for that reason.
That's why Rock put me on his show, because he knew. He knew. They said, when they called me up, the Universal Studios, Rock's president of his lawyers, all kinds of people, they said Rock came up with the idea. Rock wanted it. He wants the truth. He wants a story about me having his first match ever, not only in WWF, ever. And he says it right in his show, in his whole life. He didn't even have tights. He didn't even have boots. He had nothing. He had to borrow everything. He had nothing. That is why he named his production company $7 Production, because he only had $7 when he started. Now he's got like $180 million.
Yeah.
He's the richest man in Hollywood now.
You know, it's incredible. And again, it's another story of, like we said, perseverance and positive attitude. You know, I could sit here and, I don't want to monopolize your time here, so I do appreciate you coming in for this interview. I could ask you a million questions about the 80s and 90s wrestling, but I wanted to, finish this up, though, with a question about what's going on currently with the product, which I personally enjoy very much. But do you feel, because when you were with the WWF, and let me try to frame this the best way I can. When you were early on with the WWF, Hulk Hogan had a world title run of about 3 years, a little over 3 years, almost 4 years. Now, Roman Reigns, in today's current environment, is about halfway there, if not a little over halfway. Do you think it'd be a good idea to have him surpass Hogan's run of consecutive days as champion? Or do you kind of see it maybe coming to a close here at WrestleMania against Cody Rhodes?
I think what you don't expect is going to happen. You don't expect Cody to take the title off of Roman Reigns. To me, knowing what I know, why give them what they think's going to happen? I'm not saying I'm not telling you. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know any of the finishes. Which is, now when they want to bet on wrestling. How the hell can you bet on wrestling?
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, that's insane. I'm sorry. I love you guys too much. That's insane. I don't. What you guys do as an art form and it's so creative. If I get to speak bluntly, it's so freaking creative. And I've written books. I'm several times published author, all this crap. And I know how hard it is to come up with an idea. So to think that could be manipulated or screwed with gambling, I'll be honest with you, I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. It turns my stomach.
Every wrestler's going to be on the side calling their buddy up and saying, bet on this.
What? It's unbelievable that they would even allow it.
I think they squashed that idea. That didn't fly.
Yeah. Do you think Vince McMahon will come
But
back full time? You know, because with the sell of the company and everything going on, I mean, can you see him moving back into that creative role, or just?
I can see it. I think he's still involved, but I don't know. No one really knows. You know, I don't know the whole story. I mean, I don't know where the case lands. You know, so right now it's either civil or criminal. It's only criminal if you use corporate money. If it's personal money, it's a civil thing.
Yep.
You know, so I don't. He's always been good to me. I don't have a bad word to say about Vince, and I don't have a bad word to say about anybody in the company.
No, and where can people follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, all the wrestlers will follow me, but I'm not just saying it because of them, because I really don't care. If I don't like somebody, I'll say it right out. And I got along with everyone. Now you got to admit, talking to Barry and talking to me, it's like two different species, isn't it?
Completely. Yeah, and
yeah. You say the word jobber, you're going to get a hang up in your face.
I did not say the word jobber once.
If you say the word jobber to me, you know what I tell you? Anyone that has a job is a jobber, and all their bosses are jobbies.
Yes.
Jobber is not an insult to me. Yeah, that was my job, to wrestle, to make those guys look good. Jobber to him means I lost all the time. They even changed it to developmental. Then they changed it to ring architect. They don't even, people know now. Like half the guys that I got beat by, I can beat up in the back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a movie. It's like a movie. You got to look at it that way, like a movie. It's incredible.
If I could. Oh, go ahead. I mean.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? And I'm being very blunt. Listen, so my dad was a bus driver. All right, my dad drove a bus for 30 plus years. He had a job. Right. My grandfather was a mailman, a postal carrier. Exactly. My grandpa carried mail for 30 years. But you know what they did? They provided for their family. There was a paycheck. There was food on the table. So you could call it whatever you want. At the end of the day, they provided.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
I'm glad you look at it that way, because there's a lot of people that don't look at it that way, and I think it's stupidity. I really do.
Oh, absolutely.
But anyone who has a job, I don't care if it's a police officer, I don't care if it's a butcher, I don't care if it's a guy delivering groceries, it's a jobber.
Agreed.
That's the way I look at it.
I agree completely, sir. I truly do. So my last question for you today, and again, you know, on behalf of our show and our fans who listen, we appreciate this very much. We cover a lot of pro sports and high school sports, but this is the time of year before baseball begins, and we have a little bit of time on our hands, and this is definitely when I like to bring in professional wrestlers and MMA, because that's the one sport that does not have an off season. So we appreciate being here. But my last question for you here, I think is unbelievably unique. All those years spent with the WWF, coming into the Attitude Era, which was just amazing, electric, right? Was there ever talk, or how shocked were you when all of a sudden in 2001, WCW is bought out by Vince McMahon? Is this something that he had talked about? Because to me, as a wrestling fan, it came completely out of left field.
Well, Ted Turner had a lot more money, and he had his own network, so he had more. He had more assets to pass up Vince, but he didn't have the smarts. And plus, Vince owned it personally, so we could do the Attitude Era. Ted Turner couldn't do the Attitude Era on TBS. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the Attitude Era, I give the success to, and he bought it for pennies on the dollar. You know?
Oh yeah, it was like $2 million.
Whatever, yeah, it's like nothing. Everybody jumped there. They took all his money, then they jumped back.
Yep.
You know, I mean, he was paying all these big contracts. Okay, I got Hogan now, but you don't know what the hell to do with Hogan.
Lex Luger.
You know?
Yeah, certainly. I mean...
Yeah, Lex Luger. I mean, they know it, but you can't blame the wrestlers for going for the money because Ted Turner was paying huge amounts of money. Just to go in there, you get like $2 million, $3 million.
Yep.
So I think they did the right thing. But the Attitude Era to me was the best era.
I think it was unmatched, certainly. So hey, we wanted to thank you again. We appreciate you coming on the show today. You had mentioned your Twitter account. Is there any social media plugs you would like to go ahead and plug before we wrap up?
Follow me on Twitter, Brawler Real, and I will follow you back. Brawler Real. Now, are you the one that did my PayPal and all that? Did you see that one tweet I put out of me with the first match?
Mm-hmm.
I said I was blessed to be in the Storybrooke that came true. Rock's first match ever. Because like I said to him in the car in that series, you mean your first match at WWF? He goes, no, Steve, I mean my first match ever in my life. I mean, the guy has never been in front of 10 people in his life. But by the time I had that match over with, they were cheering the hell out of me. They were booing me.
It's a job well done.
So, well, I enjoyed this interview because you're asking good questions and you're asking the right questions.
Well, certainly so.
If you want to really learn, from podcasts, go to the one with me.
And that will do it for episode 1 of season 4 of the Wrestling with Legends podcast. I was your host, Vince McKee. Again, we want to thank our guest, the Brooklyn Brawler, Steve Lombardi. Quite the insightful interview. Definitely going to have him back, maybe do a little webcast next time. Very, very enjoyable. So we want to thank him again. And guys, coming up here in the next couple weeks, our guests will include Ahmed Johnson, Jameson. If you guys remember Jameson, when we're talking about old school WWF, obviously, as the Bushwhackers would call him, Bloody Jameson. Just 2 of the names coming up. And Thursday, we're looking at bringing on Mark Canterbury, as you guys knew him very well, as Henry O. Godwin. We'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks for coming aboard.